We are on to our next session. So for our moderator, this is for our panel discussion. For our moderator, we actually have Shonnah Hughes. She's product evangelist with GetFeedback by SurveyMonkey, another Salesforce MVP, and bringing solution awareness with trust and expertise to complex problems and products. We did have we had an original moderator. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it today. So we'd also like to thank Shonnah for being able to step in for the last minute to join us. So let's see if we got Shonnah. Are you there? We got all our panelists. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And I'll let Shonnah introduce our panelists. Oh, you're on mute.
Hey, Michael, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry, always some type of technical difficulties with running technology these days. But thank you so much for having me. And of course, you know, as the Ohana, we are always willing to step in and help each other. So as Michael said, I'll go ahead and introduce our panelists. First, I want to introduce Solomon Wilkins. He's the Director of Global Diversity Inclusion Programs at Western General. Solomon is responsible for designing, developing, and implementing D&I programs across the company's operating business. So welcome, Solomon. Second, we have Kevin Nichols. He's the co-founder and president, also Chief Executive Officer. Wow, that's a long title like mine. Kevin has worked in multifaceted capacities in some of the most prolific international law firms in the country, such as Morrison and Forrester, Paul Hastings, Heller Ehrman, and Holland and Knight. His interest in diversity and technology began while he was a mechanical engineering diversity intern at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Whoa, awesome. Matthew, and then next is Matthew Kirby. Matthew is excited to be the brainchild and creator of both Honest Human Resource Consulting, LLC, and Honest Human Resources podcast. So make sure you check out that podcast after the sessions today. Matthew had a very humble upbringing as a native of Fayetteville, North Carolina. He overcame the societal pressures of being raised in a low-income, single-parent household and was able to defeat several odds, to include being first to graduate in his family and from both an undergraduate program and graduate school. So welcome, Matthew. And next we have Jesse Martinez. Jesse is a serial techpreneur. He is an educator, a philanthropist, an investor, an advisor, a mentor, a passionate evangelist for global Latinx tech community. Whoa. Jesse is an amazing member of the Trailblazer community. He has spent over 20 plus years in the San Francisco/Silicon Valley and is originally from Houston, Texas, along with being a proud Texas A&M Aggie. Jesse is currently the VP of Sales and Business Development for Ennube Solutions. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, Jesse, but you can correct me when you come on camera. And he's part of the founding team providing Salesforce solutions and training to both the US and Latin America. So welcome, Jesse. And last but not least, we have Rebe de la Paz, otherwise known as 5-Star Rebe. Rebe is the CEO and founder of RDP Associates, LLC, a boutique and independent Salesforce consulting firm. She is a seasoned Salesforce consultant and solution architect with more than 15 years of combined experience working across many industries. Her areas of expertise include Salesforce implementation, business tech improvement solutions, end user and admin training, business technology, strategy, design, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on. Her work with the Salesforce ecosystem has garnered her recognition as a Salesforce MVP, as well as a Salesforce Trailhead DX Trailblazer Equality Award recipient for her work with Pep Up Tech. So welcome everyone. We are excited to hear from you today. So if everyone just wants to take time to just say hello. Jesse, I'm gonna start with you first, just in case I mispronounced the name of your business.
No worries, it's Ennube.
Ennube, got it, awesome.
Yeah, well, great to see you, great to see everyone. So many amazing friends, and you can just feel the warmth and spirit of the Ohana. So thank you to Oaktown Dreamin' for having me.
Thank you. And Kevin, would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hello, everybody. I was glad you didn't have to read. I don't know where that bio came from, but we can truncate that significantly. But glad to be a part of this inaugural conference.
Awesome. Thank you. And Solomon?
How's everybody doing? Solomon Wilkins. You said Western General. It's actually Western Digital. We are a hardware technology company, a cloud technology company. So if you have a computer, you have a cell phone, more than likely some of our products are in those devices. But I am born and raised in Oakland, still live here now. So I wanted to make sure I got that out before we got this party started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Solomon.
For sure.
And Rebe.
I'm surprised you even read all of that.
Shut up.
Introduction. Hi, everyone. I appreciate being invited to this call. You know, I'm just a freshman on the business side, but at the same time, I feel like I've been a hustler and an entrepreneur my whole life. So, you know, thank you, and I appreciate y'all.
Awesome. All right, so let's get this party started and ask these questions.
Hold on one moment. You forgot me. Jeez.
I am so sorry.
No worries. No worries.
Sorry, Matthew. Go ahead.
No worries. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope everyone has an amazing weekend ahead of them. You know, thank you all again for having me among this group of heavy hitters. Sheesh. You know, with all the bios and everything, you know, I'm just honored and amazed just to be in good company with everyone on here. Just a quick update. I put it in the chat. The podcast that I have, it was previously Honest Human Resources, but we've recently changed it to Young Black HR. So I wanted to make that note. You know, I won't get on my tangent now, but you know, we're making a lot of good improvements. So thank you again for everyone. I'm looking forward to being in this conversation.
Thank you, Matthew. And I apologize. I'm going to blame all of my mistakes today on the fact that I am just getting back into the groove from a 4 weeks hiatus from actually working.
Wow. No worries.
So,
welcome back.
Thank you. So let's get started, everyone. And Matthew, since, you know, I totally left you out of that intro round, I'm going to direct you as the first one to answer this question. How does your identity influence your leadership?
So I think, you know, when I think about how those two really play a part with one another, I think of them as a relationship. It's one of those things where, you know, just for me personally, and I'm sure all of us in our lives, our identity changes, right? It's not stagnant. It's ever evolving. You know, our identity in our 20s is going to be different from our 30s and 40s and so on and so forth. So when I think about this stage in my life as, you know, where I'm at in my career and what my identity is, I see myself in part as a servant leader. I also see myself as a realist. And, you know, just to throw this one in, you know, I'm Mr. Optimistic at the same time. So when I think about incorporating those things into my leadership style, you know, I'm one of those who are truly, in essence, being that servant leader. I'm a cheerleader for my team, and I really like to just be that encourager and that mentor. And where I'm at in my life right now, that is a little bit more about how my identity and how I see myself really plays into my leadership style on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew. And one thing that you actually, brought up is one thing we've been talking about a lot, just in our community, and that's just intersectionality, right? Like, how do we identify the multiple different identities that we hold and that affect how we move through our day-to-day lives? So what do you think about that question, Solomon?
Yeah, so for me, identity is about the qualities, the beliefs, the personality, the expressions, the background, the upbringing, all of those things shape your identity. But for me, whether I'm in my 20s, 30s, or 40s, I'm going to always be a Black man, right? So when I think specifically about being a Black man and how that for me applies to my ability to be a leader, so prior to Western Digital, I spent 5 years at Amazon in a variety of leadership roles. And I work in diversity, right? So when you travel and you go to different buildings and you're in different spaces and you come across Black people who typically don't see other Black people in leadership roles, for them, it's an opportunity to find connection. And for me, it's an opportunity to be a leader, to be a mentor, and to be an advocate. And so when I think about, like, I'm 6'4", I'm 250 pounds. And so I'm typically one of the tallest people in the room, typically one of the few Black people, if not the only Black person in the room. So I have a responsibility to ensure that I advocate for people who look like me, people who come from backgrounds like mine, and I don't take that responsibility lightly. So for me, yes, when you're in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s and well, I'm not in my 50s yet, so I got some time, but yes, your identity changes for sure, but regardless where we go, 100% of the time, when people look at you, they're going to see what they see on the surface. And so I take pride in being a Black man.
Yeah, amazing. I speak to a lot of the fact that when we present ourselves in the world as Black people, like, we're not ambiguous. You know exactly, what you see, you get what you see. And that has always been challenging for us because we are not just one thing, we are multiple things. We all have different backgrounds and upbringing, and it's hard to know that, but typically we're judged just by our outward appearances. And
I want to just add this really quick. The one misconception that I consistently think people hear is, like, yes, I'm Black, and I'm assuming, and I don't like to assume, but I'm going to assume for this conversation, I'm assuming Kevin is Black, and I'm assuming Matthew is Black. But just because we're all Black men, it doesn't mean that we think the same, that we are the same, that we have the same ideologies, right? I don't speak for the entire Black community, but I do speak for a good portion of them, specifically the ones that come from the urban environment. So I think that's important to articulate, because sometimes it's like, oh, well, if Solomon said it, that means that all the Black people must think this way. And that's just absolutely not the truth.
Exactly. And you mentioned that, you're not in your 40s yet. Well, sir, Black don't crack. So, All right. And I'm going to ask that same question to Jesse. Jesse, let's have your answer.
I know that's a great question. And I think, everyone thus far has touched on different elements of identity, and it does change over time. But ultimately, we do have those fundamentals, right, that establish our foundation. When we talk about identity, for myself, I'm 100% American, I'm 100% Latino, Latinx. And so being able to walk through life, with those dual lenses and being able to engage in various conversations, to be of service to others. And so thinking, how do we best empower one another, right? Regardless of who we are, where we come from. I did the ancestry.com test, and so I'm 51% Indigenous Americas, I'm 20+% Spanish, 3% Filipino, and then the rest is a mix. And so, yeah, and so when we think about, just as Latinos, who are we, where do we come from? We're diverse as well. But yeah, I think, at the end of the day, we're all human. And so how are we there for one another?
Thank you, Jesse. All right, and let's actually go on to question number 2. As the leader, what has been a blind spot for you in creating inclusive environments? So I'm actually going to ask Kevin first to start us off.
What's a blind spot in what? I'm sorry.
As a leader, what has been a blind spot for you in creating inclusive environments?
Well, for me, part of my leadership is going into rooms where I'm the minority and there's a uncomfortableness about what I'm about to say. As a consultant, I work with a lot of tech companies on diversity, equity, inclusion issues. And it's, I won't say it's a joy, but I love being able to tell people about themselves in a way that is hopefully productive for them, but also in the sense that, you know, a lot of people don't get paid to tell people about themselves and them listening. So a blind spot though for me would be making sure I continue to be my authentic self at all times. I didn't answer the previous question, but what I was going to say about that is that I'm old school, if you can't tell already. I grew up in a generation where I looked at the 50s and 60s and I saw how Black people carried themselves and what the extra level of showing their manhood and womanhood in order to gain the respect that they deserved, should have gotten already. So for me, I go into these circles. I was, you know, a teenager carrying a briefcase in high school. So I come in, that's who I am. And when I come into some environments where there are t-shirts and people that are, you know, more relaxed, et cetera, you know, I come in to set the tone that I may be, you know, personable, I may be down to earth, but at the same time, I'm about business and I take care of business. And so you should be prepared and not think sideways that when I come to you, that I'm not going to be about handling business. So that's a blind spot, you know, not getting mixed up in the culture and taking things less seriously.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And bringing out the fact that you're old school. A lot of us, I think, you know, especially because, you know, we were brought up on survival. You know, my mom always says, you know, we have old souls. And that's just because, you know, if you had a childhood, you had a limited childhood, and you had to grow up so fast. So I do take a lot from, you know, our ancestors and the people that came before us, and have much respect. So thank you, Kevin. And Rebe, let's hear your answer to that question. Do you need me to read the question over again?
No, I don't need to read it. I don't need you to read it. I know what you were saying. I do. For me, it's always something. So, you know, my mom used to tell me when I was sitting in front of her and she trying to watch TV, she said, your daddy not a glass maker. She couldn't see through me, right? And that's the thing. I can't always see through the situation when it comes to, you know, making inclusive environments, because we evolving in a virtual setting. The pandemic changed how you even interact and engage with people. How do you set up a diversity inclusion setting when you normally want to have people in person? Because there's that, you know, rhetoric of, empathy, right? Where, you know, you can really hit to someone with your words when they can see your body language and know that you respect what they're saying. How do you emit that type of body language in a virtual setting, right? You only getting a top portion or you reading facial expressions real tight. So, you know, that's one thing, but it's always something new. I can't read the future. I'm just going to set myself to expect that there will be something and know how to pivot and be able to handle the situation when it arises. So that's how I look at it.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebe. I do respect the fact that, you know, we are now all in these virtual environments, and it can be hard. It can be hard to, you know, really understand or really read if someone's being authentic. So definitely respect that, and always have respected your authenticity. So yeah, let's go to the next question. Does the shift, and I apologize, I have workers outside doing my yard, so if I need to speak up, please let me know. Does the shift of many companies moving to highlight diversity seem like social accountability or just social pandering? So I'll go ahead and have Solomon answer that first.
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's a combination of both. I've been at Western Digital for a little over 3 months, but the one thing that attracted me to Western Digital was the fact that we were having this conversation about me being their director of diversity and inclusion programs globally, was because it happened before the George Floyd case, right? If I could share with you how many companies throughout the Bay Area have reached out to me about director of diversity roles, VP roles since the George Floyd killing. You know, now that we have this verdict with the Breonna Taylor case, they're coming again, right? And it's a constant barrage of companies. There are some companies who are like, oh, I know we reached out to you before and we lost you on our radar, but we wanted to circle back with the conversation. So to me, what it appears to be is when society is putting pressure on companies to say, hey, what are you doing to focus on diversity and inclusion, then they care, right? But we've all heard this story before. Like, they care when they have to care, but they really don't care, right? And so at the end of the day, I think there are some companies who genuinely care, and there are some companies who are doing it because it's the right public relations move to make. How you determine which is which is once you get in the company and you do an assessment, you're able to understand, like, you can look at companies, the senior most leaders in companies, to determine if they're serious about diversity, right? So for example, when I was at Amazon, I'll wrap this up. People used to talk about Jeff Bezos needs to get rid of all those white guys and hire some brothers to be on his senior vice president's team. And I didn't think they needed to do that. I'll tell you why. If I built the company from scratch with all of my buddies, and as the years progress, we turn into Amazon and everybody's black, then that's just what happened, right? But when one of my buddies leaves, so if one of Jeff's senior vice presidents leave the company, that's an opportunity to backfill them with a person of color. You shouldn't just fire somebody just because they're white and you need a black person. That's defeats the whole role of inclusion, right? And so for me, I think it's a combination of both, and the only way to tell is the time. Time will tell.
Exactly. And I also would have to say, time tells. So the history, like, you prove
Right.
your work, you prove your works by your actions. So you need to, you can take a look back and see what they have been doing, or, quite frankly, most have not. So you can definitely tell that by doing your research and doing your due diligence.
And a lot of these companies have money, right? So all of the social impact initiatives where we're going to give $10 million to an HBCU and $5 million to Black Lives Matter, that doesn't mean anything. Like, I know that's great on the surface, and yes, you're giving money, but you got to get that money away or you're going to get taxed on it, right? So at the end of the day, what are the senior most leaders doing in the company to give a voice to the voiceless when nobody's around? That's how you show that you really care.
Exactly. Systemic racism
There you go.
requires systemic solutions.
Yeah.
And
I love
without
that.
those, we
Yeah.
can't move forward.
And Shonnah, it kind of reminds me, sorry to jump in, Shonnah, it kind of reminds me of an episode that I did probably about a month or two ago, and it was entitled, How the Hell Do I Get a Job in Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion? And when we think about looping that same kind of notion in with your question, I very bluntly say on the episode, and I'm being facetious here a little bit, but diversity, equity, inclusion has been around for 5 minutes. Why do folks want people with 15, 20 years of experience,
Crazy.
arguably in some cases longer than your company has been in existence, especially when we talk about the newer companies and things of that nature. So really just looping in and having not only my listeners and viewers to tune into that, but really understand, and Solomon hit it well earlier, it's one of those things where, outside of being in the company, you're not going to necessarily gauge fully to where if they're being genuine or if they're pandering you. A lot of the response that I've seen just from across not only the country, but even on a global front, is reactive. You know, let's call a duck a duck.
Right.
You know, it's reactive. It's the great thing to do. And granted, I get it. I'm a business owner myself, similar to how many of you are. You know, I can see it from that perspective, but it's one of those things where oftentimes it's not genuine. We're even starting to hear more feedback from those who are in those kind of DE&I positions, VP, you know, whatever the case may be, say, hey, just because, you know, a Black person or any other person of color is in the position doesn't mean it's really changing anything. So I think as time continues to go on, we're gonna hear more of that insight. But even if you're at the crossroads of determining, hey, if I should take this opportunity or this kind of opportunity to make an impact, really do your due diligence once you get on the inside, because very quickly you're going to be able to tell if, you know, this is genuine or not.
Exactly. Thank you, Matthew. And, you know, you don't have to wait for me to call on you. If you have like a thought, you can jump in, you can cut me off, whatever. It is what it is.
I'd like to add a tad bit to this as well, this conversation, because it is important. I posted on my LinkedIn profile the other day, maybe about 3 or 4 days ago, an article for the Harvard Business Review that I recommend everyone reading about. It talks about if your company is has just posted a chief diversity officer position. And it goes really deep into looking at asking the companies themselves, did you have this in mind 6 months ago? You know, does this person actually report to the CEO? And all these other questions that it asks. And if the answers to those questions are no, then it says basically you're not very serious about what it is you're trying to do. So I know that a lot of people have been, you know, just like Solomon, my phone's been ringing off the hook because of the fact that Black colleagues I know that are the lone Black person in a company that's been tapped to be the diversity person, answering all the questions for senior leadership about, you know, how do you do this? What should we do? What should our Black Lives Matter statement say? And then getting past that Black Lives Matter statement, you know, I'm an engineer, I'm a marketer, like this isn't my lane. I don't do this type of stuff every day. So they're tapping out and reaching out to consultants and other people to kind of help their companies deal with this kind of stuff. So what my recommendation is while there is guilt, while there is this need to feel corporate responsibility and social responsibility, let's take advantage of it. Let's get into these companies. Let's try to make change. I guarantee it's going to dry up just like affirmative action did. So while the timing is right, let's get in there and let's make it better for us in these companies, and let's hold these companies accountable to give back to the community.
Awesome. I love that.
I just wanted to throw one thing in there. One of the things that, you know, a lot of us have said in the Black community is we tired because it's the same, because we know the history is cyclical. This has happened in different formats over and over again. And it's just a rebranding of the same rhetoric, right? You know, and the other thing with the social pandering or the accountability, there's that level of patronization that has occurred, you know, between businesses in the Black community. I mean, look at the 90s, McDonald's and Sprite went on those marketing. Oh, we love the Black people because they spend money at McDonald's and Sprite, right? So, you know, it's similar things going on, and it's a hybrid mix. But I will say this, awareness and social media has opened up a different lens to how we look at these companies. People are becoming more aware of how we spend our dollars, because we know in this country, the dollar means more than anything else to these businesses. So, you know, I just hope that as they create these new influx of roles for D&I, that people actually thinking outside of the box and not doing the same methodologies they've been doing since the 80s when D&I became something that people started to look at in companies. So that's my thoughts on it. And I mean, I know it drives into a question you had on tokenism.
No, thank you. Thanks, Rebe. I really appreciate that. We all know that priorities follows the dollar. almighty dollar. So, you know, if they want to make it a priority, they're going to put some money and resources behind it. We all know that. Also, a little bit to, I think what Kevin was saying, you know, about making sure that sorry, now I'm forgetting exactly how you put it, Kevin. But I was thinking about that part on tokenism that Rebe kind of brought out a little bit, and you spoke a little bit about it too. Just making sure that, you know, we are speaking truth to power, and that we are being authentic is really important. People know when you're being fake. They know when it's just performative. They know. We all know, and we're just not here for it anymore. And I think I can speak for all of us when I say we're just done. We're fed up, and we need change. I know, Jesse, that you specifically, like you've been on the circuit for a very long time. I know that you've spoke at Davos and a bunch of other, you know, places. Do you have any thoughts on this? Because you've dealt with so many organizations and things of that nature.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. You know, great points by the panel here. And I think at the end of the day, thinking about, you know, up to this point, you know, I think the important word is how do we hold people accountable, right? People in the companies, because a lot of this stuff is in writing now. And so who's going to be, say, that watchdog per se, that makes sure that these companies are following through with their commitments? And then how do we measure those commitments that they've made and over what time? And then what are those KPIs that are a result of that? And so thinking about metrics. And so, you know, who's someone out there that wants to create it on the Salesforce platform? And therefore we can, you know, leverage technology to really hold people accountable and make sure that companies are fulfilling these commitments. And so I think that's really what's top of mind for me. And so that leveraging this moment in time and delivering on what people are stepping up to do.
If I could just add something right there, that data piece is really important when you talk about like measuring progress. Too many companies don't, you know, it's interesting. Business leaders consistently talk about how important the data is until it relates to diversity. And then it's not that important. So I'll give you an example, right? It's not
measurable.
Yes.
But it is,
right?
But it is, right? If you think about sourcing talent, right? If you look at the life cycle of a candidate's interview experience, Black and brown people get interviewed less, and I'm just talking about percentages. They get interviewed less, they get offered opportunities less. When they get into the company, they dwell in roles twice as long, they don't get promoted as fast, and they get terminated twice as often. And this is consistent across industry. So you can't just sit here and tell me that Black and brown people aren't smart, or we aren't educated, or we don't know how to do our jobs. There's these systemic issues that people refuse to acknowledge. And because of it, you're going to continue to have the same issues, right? Like for me, until companies, like all of the companies have the same strategy. We're going to go to some HBCUs. We're going to go to Afrotech. We need more Black people. We need more brown people. Everybody's doing the same thing. It's to me, it's more about inclusion than it is diversity. Don't get me wrong, diversity is important. But before diversity can happen, like you're going to go to an HBCU and go to Afrotech and try to bring in 100 new Black people. But the Black people that are already in your company, they absolutely hate it. So why would you bring a group of new energy into a space with a group of energy of people that are unhappy? All they're going to do is mix that new energy with that unhappy energy, and the current Black people that are unhappy because you're not treating them fair, because you're not promoting them, because you're terminating their friends, they're going to tell all the new Black people how much they don't like it, and then those people are going to hate it too. So for me, yes, you can measure all of this stuff, but when you present the data, how do the senior leaders respond? And if they aren't responding, you got to keep searching until you find the right space.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Solomon. You know, that's one thing that I've been dealing with a lot, you know, not only with the leaderships in my organization, but multiple other organizations as well. The playbook wasn't created for us, right? The playbook for all of this wasn't meant for us. we have to rewrite the playbook. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not really invested in this. And, you know, to add to your, you know, equality versus, you know, inclusion, I would have to say my biggest thing is equity. Because when you do get into these organizations, we have a ceiling that we are hitting, right? So there's no Black people, like there's Black people in the organization, but there's no Black people at, you know, director, senior director, VP, you know, all the way up to the top. You stop seeing color when you get to those levels. So how does equity look in your organization, and what are you doing to promote, you know, those Black and brown employees, or Black and Latin employees? Because let's be, you know, let's be transparent. Those are the ones that are underrepresented in these tech companies. And this panel is not about me, so I'm going to shut up and move on to my next question. All right. So next question is, you know, how does your respective company's leadership team reflect their commitment to diversity, or does it have an opposing narrative?
I'll jump in and start. Just when I think about it, and even most recently in my career, I've started most recently at a small tech startup. And when we think about, you know, just smaller businesses, even on that scale, and organizations, you know, it kind of goes back into, you know, what I believe Solomon was hinting at earlier, you know, right? If you start your company up with your buddies, right, you're not going to necessarily go and start purging people, right, just for the sake of it. But even when I think about, for me in particular, so this particular company that I'm at, you know, I'm the HR director there. So first and foremost for them, it's not only the first time having that position, but also having somebody Black in that position as a Black man. And I sit on the executive team. And then the other new hire that was brought in was our senior director of operations. So 2 Black men on this executive team that for now is comprised of a decent mix of people. I think that not only shows what their intentions are, but also where they want to go. And sometimes, you know, when I think about different situations like that, it becomes a thing to where, you know, for my company and even some of the other companies I've been at, you know, the intentions are very clear. The actions can be very clear. Can't say that for all companies, but at least in my experiences and even where I'm at right now, those intentions have been really clear, because we tend to be a community first organization. So we want to go over and beyond to look like our community versus busting talent in necessarily.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump in on that question?
I would just say, show me your budget and I'll show you your priorities. So at the same time, you know, a lot of people talk about things and people look at, they look at diversity and say, hey, you know, we recruit, you know, all of our Black folks here are from Harvard, Yale, or Stanford. And they're like, great, well, that's not diversity, you know. And if you look at, you know, your senior leadership, if you look on web pages of all these companies, and you'll see diversity, and you'll see that there'll be gender diversity all over the place. Yeah. But you don't see Black people there, especially if you look at their board. So show me your budget, show me your revenue and where your expenses go, and I'll show you your priorities.
Exactly.
I wanted to say a few things. So we're in a different situation where Ennube Solutions is Latino led. It's founded by a couple, which is, you know, really awesome. We're East Bay based. In addition, we're a Salesforce ISV. We're an App Exchange partner. And then most recently, Alex, one of the co-founders, became part of the App Exchange Partner Advisory Board. And so for me, what that means is that we can lead by example, but then we can also open the door for others. And so how do we ensure, as we look at the overall Salesforce ecosystem, App Exchange, et cetera, partners, how do we diversify that and create more diversity in the Salesforce solutions, you know, being led by partners?
Awesome. Thank you. If no one else wants to comment on that question, we can move on to the next question. I am very surprised Rebe's being very quiet today. So I'm going to ask this question, and I know she has something to say about this. So what role does tokenism play in your organization? Are you the only person who looks like you amongst your immediate peers? And I know for some of you who are founders, you know, go back to your previous position where you were working for, you know, an organization.
I want to go second. Right.
No, so for me, in my organization, I guess that sort of answers the last question too. I started a business because of the lack of diversity, right? I started it because there's a lack of diversity in Black women-owned tech companies. There is a lack of, you know, being the only Black woman at a table, you know, and sitting there and them asking me, can they have my notes? And I said, your hand is not broken. You can type too, and you're not gonna be able to read my notes. So, you know, things like that, those microaggressions, that led me to this. And also, you know, when we founded Pepotech, it was because they kept telling us this myth that there's no diversity in the pipeline. And I was like, that is some total bull, because I don't went to school since the late 90s. And it was a lot of us trying to learn tech back then. And that's when it was Lotus 1, 2, 3. So, you know, I'm dating myself. But, you know, once I started teaching students and we started creating pipeline, wasn't nobody trying to hire anybody, right? So we disproved your myth. You said there wasn't a pipeline. Then we presented you with highly potential computer science degree students who've been trained in the platform. Great potential. We've given them the step up in the networking. We've given them the ins and outs, and now you're not hiring them. So you tell me, what's your next reason for why you're not hiring? So I started a company because I was like, I'm gonna hire students, and I got like 5 on the payroll right now, and I'm a freshman. So, you know, and it's not even, for me, diversity is not just, you know, Black folks, right? It's not just Latinos, it's older people. Because when you Black and you get old and that recession hit, or you Latino and you get old and you lost your job, don't nobody want to hire you. And I speak from experience because I went back to college after having years of experience working in all the support roles through all the industries and watching all the higher ups and never being able to bridge that gap because I didn't have that stupid degree. I could have as many credits as I want, but I didn't have a degree. I went back and got my degree and then some, and still they didn't want to hire me. So tell me why, you know, you keep giving me all these walls. You keep putting all these walls. And then, you know, for those who are trying, you know, I have friends who, you know, honestly, they biased and they don't see it. And they're like, well, you pulled yourself up by the bootstraps. Yeah, but do you know how many hurdles I had to jump? Do you know how many times people told me no? Do you know how many times people pushed me down, didn't promote me, overworked me?
Rebe, you had to make the boots. What are you talking about?
I had to cut the material, stitch the boot up, put some support in there, and then still make it fit my feet. Okay. And then I had to make it comfortable for me to walk. And it's still not comfortable because I'm a new business owner. So I'm still learning. But I'm not your token. And it's when and this goes back to your first question about identity and influence on leadership. The biggest problem to be a person of African-American descent in this country is that we lost our narrative when they took us from Africa, right? And we had to find our narrative, but instead people was owning our narrative. And it's like, now this is why it's so important when we see the Issa Raes and we see the Ava DuVernays, they are portraying us in a narrative perception that we have not seen before. That's why Black Panther meant so much to us, because it's like, wow, I see a Black superhero. You know, for me as a business owner, you know what I wanted to build? And I didn't want to go into business. I didn't want anything to do with it because I thought it was evil, because it's about money, and money destroys the intent of positivity that we want to build in our communities. But for me, it was, I want to build from Boomerang. I want to build my Lady Eloise, because when I saw Eddie Murphy and them had a Black business, I was like, that is so dope, where I could go to a company and people look like me. But when I went into corporate, nobody looked like me. So that's what I'm trying to do. Am I going to succeed? I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller.
You will, because we got you.
But that's my thing. I'm not your token. You know what I'm saying? Right. If anything, I'm the one you want to come to get it done, right? I'm not your token, though. So that's it.
Exactly. I know I've been called token so many times I can't even count. And I'm called token by people who don't even know me, know my story, know how I am, know who I am. I've never been and never will be anyone's token just because people like to talk about me, like to promote me, like that's their business. But it's all because I am who I am and I'm authentically me. And hopefully that's what they respect about me. But Matthew, I know you wanted to speak on it, so.
Yeah, and you know what? I had a feeling this was going to happen. That's why I was like, let me get my little piece out of the way, because that's such a hard response to follow. But I agree with it wholeheartedly, and I just want to take this moment to let everyone, Black, brown, woman, veteran, someone who has disabilities, whatever the case may be, that don't feel pressured to be in that token, especially in regards to an issue that you did not create for your own selves. Right, we talk about this and we think about a lot of different aspects in this DE&I scenario, and it's one of those things where, you know, I've said it on my show, I'm sure other people think it as well, but, you know, Black people, brown people, whatever the case may be, shouldn't be in charge of overcoming an issue that we didn't even give ourselves or had nothing to do with in the beginning. You know, so I just needed to put that out there. And even just thinking about tokenism itself, I believe Kevin was speaking on this earlier in the conversation. You know, there's this thing that's called intersectionality. You know, we all may, you know, be one thing, but we have so many different perspectives. And I just want to, you know, let the powers that be know that, you know, we're all not a monolith. You know, we're all not a single experience. There is so much diversity, even within underrepresented and minority groups, that it's crazy. It'll blow your head off. Yes, you know, come to us in the sense that, you know, if you're genuinely speaking, you know, want to get some perspective and insight. But again, one person doesn't speak for the other, for sure. And I'm not going to take on the weight, in a sense, to solve the problem that I didn't put myself in to begin with.
Exactly. I often say, you know, this is not a problem that we created, but it's a problem that we're expected to help fix. And how are we to do that? Because they make the rules and then they keep moving that finish line.
Right.
So difficult. Go ahead, Kevin.
Real quick, I just want to say that tokenism is something that they use against us to kind of keep us to feel bad about the opportunity. I grew up in the time of affirmative action, so I always knew I was going to be the spook that sat behind the door. So I don't care what you call it, you let me in, and then it's on. All right. So once you get in, you have a chance to prove whatever it is that you need to prove and get the information that you need to get and bring it back to your community. So don't let people try to downplay or steal your thunder or take your light from you because they want to put whatever euphemisms on what they want to call you. A lot of people will do that in these opportunities. Get in those companies, take that knowledge, you know, start your own business, bring that information back to your community, and have no shame in your game about it.
Exactly. Thank you.
Make sure you get paid for it, right?
Exactly.
Already passed, and they don't want to pay us. And so before we embark on those endeavors and initiatives, make sure that you get paid.
Exactly.
Definitely a lot of lowballing going out there. I'm sure anyone who's a consultant now and even speaker at whatever event, you know, that's a whole nother issue about us being lowballed. I remember I have a couple of friends who are speakers and engagement folks, and I remember one of the situations was an opportunity, you know, with the company that makes billions of dollars, and you only offering, you know, $2,500 to speak. Where when we look at the records and really do our due diligence, you're paying minority speakers just across the board a lot less than what you are doing other speakers. So if one person's making, you know, $20,000 to speak, what you want me to do with this little $2,500? What I'm gonna do with that?
I would say regarding speaking, and not even just speaking, but just doing a job in general and accepting an offer letter, it's all about what you feel you're worth and how you negotiate. Because
Know your worth.
I've been speaking for a long time, and I get paid according to how I dictate the contract. And if they don't offer me what I know that I'm worth, then I don't do the speaking engagement, and it's not going to be any sweat off my back. You know, they'll get a new speaker, I'll move on, and then they'll know next time they come to have this conversation, they'll have to come correct. At the end of the day, right, yes, they're going to lowball us in the beginning, but if you stand your ground and do your research, to your point, Matthew, on what they've paid other people, what's the difference, right? So you compare your accolades, you compare your speaking resume, and you say, I'm just as equal, if not more talented than this person. So either you pay me, you pay them 20,000, oh, I need 25 then. Right? Like, don't even pay me the same 20 you paid them, because I know I'm going to do more for your business than what they did. So 25 or I'm out the door, and then they're going to offer you that. Now, it's risky because a lot of times they're going to say, all right, I'm out of here. You have to be willing to roll with the punches.
I 100% agree with that. You set the rules of engagement of how people are going to engage with you. So once you set those standards and you're like, this is who I am, this is what I'm worth, you take it or leave it, because there will be other opportunities. You have to be willing to take that risk. However, I do know, as us being Black and brown, we have been, basically we have been mismanaged, and our talent has been mismanaged, and our opportunities just haven't been there. And a lot of decisions we have made have been strictly to survive. I get that. And I get that maybe you're not able to just say no to a specific position, but start setting yourself up to put yourself in that position to be able to be like, you know what? No, I can't do that. You're not paying me enough, etc. Because you are worth it. You are worth a lot more than what they're offering. Always go 20% higher. That's what I do. And then we can negotiate.
That's a really good point. And I want to emphasize this last piece, which I think is really important. If you need the money, don't just stand on some principle and lose out on $2,500 that you could pay some bills with, right? So at the same time, that $2,500 could be used to help you continue to build your speaking resume. So you got to find a balance between knowing when to say no and understanding that some opportunities you just have to bite the bullet on. And in 2 years, when that company comes back, that $2,500 is going to turn into $25,000.
Yeah. Don't be prideful and broke.
Exactly.
I appreciate
there you go.
Hold on. If you just beginning, let me throw some context in here.
There you go.
Don't sit around and be looking like a fool. But yeah, definitely, what everyone has been saying, it's all a chess game. If you know that there's more value right now to get the experience and the gig into what will become that profile, then you might want to be a little flexible on the coins right now. But once you get to a certain point, then you flip that strategy. The coins become a little bit more important, and then you start to pick and choose what kind of events you want to be a part of.
Exactly.
Matthew, that's important because I started off speaking for free, speaking for $100, and I remember saying, "Wow, somebody's gonna pay me $100 just to talk." I talk all the time for free, so I'll take the 100. So to Matthew's point, thank you for adding that context. It's not just about going in with no resume, with no history of speaking, and saying you need $10,000, because it just don't work like that. So thank you, Matthew. I just want to add that piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you said playing chess, and I say this to my friends all the time. They're playing checkers. You need to be playing chess. And guess what? The Black Queen is the most powerful piece in the game. So I just had to bring that out.
I just want to throw in there too, we always think about chess. While they playing chess, I'm playing, Sun Tzu. Like I'm doing strategy because they hired me to strategy.
Not everybody know what Sun Tzu is.
I'm just saying. It's the art of war, because literally it is a battle. You got to pick them, right? So some battles you're going to take that risk, but others you got to look at the long game. right? As you strategize for a longer term partnership. Am I going to take this because I know this the test that's going to lead to the wider pastures, right? And I've played those, and these are the things that, you know, you got to study. So whatever role you're in, and if you have a future vision, study what everybody is doing around you so that you can strategize and learn how to develop for your own path forward, right?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna sacrifice a pawn. I'm definitely gonna do that.
So that's where I'm at. But that's the one where what question are we on still?
Girl, I don't know.
I'm trying to move.
We kind of deviated from the question.
I'm looking at your questions. I'm trying to help you move forward. It's the strategy.
Right. Well, we are actually coming up on time, and I don't know if the panel is willing to do some live Q&A.
Yeah, let's take some from the audience.
Okay, this isn't a community event, and I love my community. So, you know, I know that Solomon and Matthew and Jesse, you know, Rebe and Kevin, you all have been answering questions in the chat. But if there's anything anyone wants to ask at this moment that I can read live, please, let's get her in. Let's get it done. Let's see. Now everybody's being quiet. Awesome. Rebe, I do have a question for you, being, you know, kind of the newest, you know, the baby business starter. Baby business starter, but OG in the game. Can you, you know, speak a little bit to, you know, what brought you to that decision, and, you know, how was it difficult for you to make? Were you nervous? You know, you have a family to take care of.
Yeah, no,
So,
I was scared. I've been scared for a minute. And I actually had a plan to create my own. Well, I had a plan when I started with the Salesforce and was like, I'm gonna give it 150. I was just like, I'm gonna be a consultant in 5 years, and I did it in 4 years. And then I said, once I'm a consultant, I'm gonna learn everything they do. I'm gonna study everything they do from the beginning to the end. And when I brought them in 3 million in the first quarter, I was just like, I know I'm doing something right. So I was just like, but I was scared. And so the first thing was getting over the fear and literally writing it on paper. And I want to say like maybe 6 out of the 9 things I wrote down came true. I'm still here. I'm breathing. I ain't broke. And you know what? It's like, it's gotten easier. But I have to say, I also believe in my path, you know, because I believe in the divinity. And God has shown me the signs, and I've seen them. And I have kept my mind open and aware, because it may be somebody, you know, that I can help. And that was the intention for why I started this. I literally get phone calls from people all the time. And if I have a way that I can help and impact with what I'm doing, that's that next level of the path. That's that next level of bringing what I do, and I'm developing it as 360 degrees, you know, social impact and how you do business. That's why I called it RDP, redefine possibilities, because it's not about, you know, the standard McKinsey way, right? I'm trying to do business and break all the paradigms, right? I'm breaking all the rules, because my thing is, I've always been a mistake learner, a tester, a wire. I'm always asking why I can't do this, why I can't do that. Well, let's see what happened. And the thing about it is, you know, the best mistakes created some of our greatest inventions, right? Yeah. So that's what I'm doing with business. And I mean, I did want to, since nobody asked any questions, I did want to do one thing where you say what gives you hope.
I was just about to ask that.
It's just each person I reach, you know, and impact in that journey. Because if I was to, you know, pass away tonight, I would want people to remember my legacy for, you know, the people I've reached, right? Because that's my narrative. My narrative is in the people and in the communities and the villages that I've created, in the networks and the connections. And if I was able to reach out and help one person that changed their life so that they can make somebody else's life better, that's it. So that's my hope.
Preach, Rebe.
So Solomon, what's your hope?
For the future?
He like, when? Right now? For the future?
What's the question? Is it my hope for the future, for the world?
So yeah, basically your hope for the future, like what do you see? What kind of leadership efforts would you be willing to undertake to encourage the community? No, that's not the question. Sorry.
No, I got
During
the question.
these challenging times, what gives you hope? That is the question.
Okay. Yeah. So what gives me hope is young people, right? Like, I have a 17-year-old son who has a 4.83 grade point average, never got a B in his life. He wants to go to Berkeley or Stanford or UCLA. I have an 8-year-old girl who is on his path, and I got a 5-year-old who's just as passionate. And a lot of the work I do in the community in Oakland specifically, and the connections I have and the mentoring that I do is with young people. And for me, it's all about the next generation, right? How do we set them up so they won't be dealing with a lot of the atrocities that we've dealt with as people? For example, what's going on with Breonna Taylor and the results of that case. And speaking of that, I want to say to any Black women on this call, regardless what America tells you they think of you, I promise you, if I'm ever in a situation and I see a Black woman getting disrespected, I'm just going to let you use your imagination. But it just, disrespect will not happen on my watch related to any woman, but specifically a Black woman. My mother is Black, my wife is Black, my daughter's Black, so it just is not going to happen. So for me, I want to make sure that the next generation has the tools and resources that they need, and more importantly, the knowledge, right? I have a master's degree now, similar to Matthew, first one in my family to graduate high school, first person to graduate college, first male to graduate high school, first person to graduate college. And education has changed my life. It has put me in a position financially to do things that I never thought I'd be able to do. And I'm continuing to grow and elevate. So education in young people for me is the key to the future.
Right.
Hey, Shonnah, how much time do we have? I'm seeing a lot of great questions popping up.
I know we have a ton of great questions.
Right. I was going to say for me, the short answer, and I'm just looking through all these questions, microaggressions, imposter syndromes, as a white person, what can I do? And so on and so forth. So my very short answer, again, I don't know what the time is like, but I've addressed each one of those kind of questions on my podcast platform. So I can guarantee you, I speak at length in different topics that I'm seeing in some of these questions. So just a reminder, you all go check out the Young Black HR podcast. I just wanted to put that out there, Shonnah.
I love that plug.
Put that plug in. I'm sorry, everyone. We are over time, and I know that we can all talk about this all day, but we do have to give the floor back to the event hosts. But there is some Q&As in there, panelists. If you want to go in there and in the Q&A function and just kind of answer those questions, that would be great. And also, I know there was a couple that came through in the chat function as well. So please, panelists, if you can go and answer those so the community can get those gems that you've been dropping all day. And I just want to thank you, Jesse. You are amazing. Your repertoire, precedes you. Thank you so much for joining us, Solomon. It was so great getting to know you and learning from you. So thank you. Rebe, you my sister from another mister, and I love you to death. We'll always be family. Matthew, thank you so much. So great learning from you today and getting to know more about you and your journey. Just an amazing individual. And Kevin, you are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for bringing that old school swag into the mix. I love it. Can't wait to learn more from you as well. So I'm going to turn it back over to Michael.
All right. Thank you, Shonnah. Thank you all our panelists.